Let me tell you something about this class, what goes on in this room, in case you don't fully understand. What goes on in this room during a meeting is something that is actually, literally out of this world. What happens in this room is so overwhelmingly truthful and right and rightly inspiring and healthy, so healthy that almost no one can understand it. Almost no one has a receptive mind that can hear what goes on here, take it, and say how marvelous. This class, to most people, would be like a little child, a little kindergarten child going to hear an adult lecture on astronomy. The child comes in with his parents, and the astronomer gets up on a platform and has charts and points to the stars and goes into detail of the vast distances. And the little child sits there only 1/10 paying attention to begin with. But if he hears something, there's no way a child mind can understand the immensity of distances in the stars. If you talk to that child afterward, and especially if you lead him and say, "Did you understand what the man said?" The child, of course, half the time, if you lead him, will nod his head like that, just like that. See, he's only half heard the question, and he's thinking about the ball he sees out on the ground there. He nods his head like that. This is exactly the way adults are when they come here. Now, when a person comes into this room who has something seriously marred inside him or her, and hears these truths, that individual has no choice whatever but to distort it. There's no choice at all. All he can do is hear and then go into his various hundreds of self-protecting, ego-protecting devices, which could be anger, which could be scorn, which could be closing his mind even while the talk is going on. I'm trying to get the following point over to you. Do you, now I'm talking to you, not to people who come in here from the outside and wonder about it. I'm talking about you who come here all the time. Do you understand, even in a small way, how high everything is in this room? Why don't you try to see the kindergarten child in you that only half pays attention? How has your mind wandered already? And I've talked for about 3 minutes. It's been gone somewhere else. Where were you? At home, down at the beach? Where were you? Try to see this kindergarten child in you that would rather play than grow up and be adult and try to understand the very, very high things that go on in here. The world doesn't want it. The question is, do you want it badly enough to sacrifice something to get it? Sacrifice giving up the lazy, idle pleasure of being seated out there and just let any vagrant, idle thought take you over, and you're gone. And all of a sudden, you're suddenly aware that I'm up here talking to you because maybe something funny was said or a little illustrative story was said, and now the little child in you wants to be entertained by the story, and so you suddenly come back. The next time you come back to this room, I want you to remember that you were gone. That is an effort to become an adult, and that will lead you inevitably to where you see what's going on here you thought you knew. Let me tell you what you have about this class. I'm going to go into more detail a little bit later, but you have a sensing. You're sensing that this is different, but you don't know what that difference consists of. And you're afraid that perhaps in some way it's going to harm you, which means that that's the little child, that's the world out there that has put self-protection first. The self-protection that destroys your opportunity for a real life, to be free of the one thing you need to be free of, which is yourself. Now I want to go into, again, with a very special addition, the story of the forest ranger and the bear. Let's start at the very beginning. The bear, of course, is any human being who comes into this world. So here's a little bear out in the forest. See, you're paying attention now. Here's the little bear ambling around the woods out there, happy, and he's discovered what berries are good off the bushes, and he delights in this cool stream on a hot day, and he's romping around the woods having a marvelous time. But one day he hears something sharp in his mind. There's a sound somewhere, and he feels a pain in his leg. And he looks up, and there's some other kind of a creature over there holding a stick in his hand, and there's a little smoke coming out of the stick. And he begins to associate pain with that other creature over there a couple hundred yards away with that smoking stick in his hand. And he runs away in pain, yelping. A little later, the same thing happens again. He hears a noise of some kind which startles him, and he looks around. There's another one of those creatures who is carrying what looks to be a branch in his hand. This goes on over and over and over until very deeply planted in the bear's mind is the fact in his mind that that person, that other wild creature over there, is a danger to him, a threat to him. Therefore, he must at all costs keep a distance from him. Strange creature over there, pain here. Therefore, it makes sense to the bear's thinking that he should stay away from the stranger over there, that strange creature over there. Happens on and on until it becomes very, very hardened in the bear's mind, the associations of pain with the other creature. One day along comes a forest ranger. This is years later. The cub is no longer a cub. He's grown up. A forest ranger comes along, and he hears a shot at a distance, and he's investigating hunters. So he goes over, and the hunter isn't in sight, but he sees the bear who's just been shot again, and it's obvious that he's in great pain and limping away. And the ranger wants to get closer to see what the situation is in order to help the bear. And the bear turns around and sees the creature there. There he is, two-legged creature standing there, and the bear has a double reaction. First, the pain of the shot, the bullet in his leg, and then there's the creature. Again, there's that same creature who's going to hurt me again. See, all those strange creatures are one in his mind. There's no way he can think any higher than that. So the bear runs away, and the ranger tries to get closer to him, but can't do it. So the bear goes off, and he begins to hide out, becomes very wary. He looks at every tree and every bush. Is there one of those evil, hurtful creatures behind that tree? I'd better be very careful. And there's a suspicious, neurotic look in his eyes, fearing that he might run into the unexpected. The ranger understands that he can't approach the bear. No way. So the ranger goes back to his cabin in the middle of the woods there, where he stays and makes his daily patrol. The ranger sits out on the porch sometimes during lunch and in the evening, and he catches a glimpse of the bear circling furtively all around the circle, the cleared circle. He can see him poking his nose out behind the bush and darting away again, coming back. Next day he looks toward the cabin again, goes away. The bear sees the ranger on the porch, and the ranger sees the bear. All the time now, of course, the ranger understands what is happening. He can understand the bear, but of course the bear can't understand the ranger. So here's the situation. Here's that wounded bear, that wounded human being, out in the dark forest, hurt, confused, and having a sensing. Now this particular bear has been wounded, has a certain sensing of something different about the ranger. because after a long time of observing the ranger, the bear has never seen one of those smoking sticks in his hand. So that, and somehow he's associated that smoking stick with his pain. Not having seen it, he thinks there might be something different about that wild creature than the other wild creature. But, I'll tell you, when you have been wounded thousands of times, that is what is controlling your mind and your feelings and your whole life. Not any small bit of logic you might be able to pull out of your mind. So the bear continued to wander around. Listen, strangely attracted to the ranger on the porch, but utterly unable to go to him. Now we come to a spiritual law. Here's the law, very simple. Absolute, no exceptions. The bear must go to the ranger can't go to the bear. Understand? You see why that is so? Something has to happen inside the human being, the bear-like human being, where he is able to overcome just enough to take a little step forward, another step. If he got close enough, he'd see the ranger isn't going to hit him at all or hurt him at all. Now here's another problem. Many times in that bear's roaming around the woods, he saw a man, the wild creature, who had the same kind of a hat and uniform that wild creature had who was sitting on the porch there. And he came close, and when he got close, that man with a hat pulled out a gun and shot him. See, he's suspicious, and rightly so in that sense, because he and you have been betrayed by how many people, you name it, who said they were going to be nice to you. They were wearing disguises. Those were false rangers. Those were hunters trying to kid the bear. No, another one of my favorite sayings, it's a wonder we're not all locked up in the lunatic asylum for what was done to us. But we're not going to feel sorry for ourselves, of course. We're going to be brave, rightly brave, and being brave in the sense we're going to find out. That's what brave means, to find out. Not to say I'm brave and try to kid yourself into it. So we have the situation, the spiritual law, where the ranger has to just sit there on the porch and just wait and watch the bear. And little by little, he can watch how that bear is going to change his reaction within himself as he comes closer. The ranger just sits there, and little by little, finally, the woods are loaded with wounded bears, right? Only one or two of them are going to get close enough up so that the ranger can take his bandages or whatever they do and help the bear out. Us wounded people, have to be willing then to come out of the dark woods with all the pain, all the fear. You're terrified. It's in your faces, it's in your manners, it's in your emotions. You're hiding out all the time, right in this room. This is the friendly ranger station. Let's take a very close look at what it means to approach the ranger. What it means essentially is for you to be willing to let reality do your seeing for you. Real slow now. Approaching the ranger station so that you can be healed by the ranger means that you have to voluntarily let reality see you and the world instead of you seeing from your own mind, right? Clear? All right. 3 ways in which we see things. You see yourself in a certain way, don't you? Don't you see yourself in a certain way? You condemn yourself or praise yourself. Self-seeing is one way. Other people see you too. Do you think there's a matching or a variance? Of course, we're all flattering when we see ourselves and other people who are not quite in love with us as we are with ourselves. It's all quite different. Third way in which you are seen. Aren't you glad? This is why we're here, because we know that if we can permit the third way of seeing, if we can permit reality to do our seeing for us, we are healed. Right? This means you're going to have to stop doing two things. You're going to have to stop seeing yourself according to your preference, according to your flattery, according to what makes things the easy way. You're just going to have to stop that, and that ties in very much with who you associate with and why you associate with them. You associate with people who are as bad off as you are, so that you have this quiet conspiracy agreement between each other that you won't hurt each other's feelings, and it happens anyway. Doesn't it? All these little peace treaties that we sign with each other, we tear them up at the smallest little affront to our marvelous name, right? So both have to go. Instead, simply an invitation, and you do a little thinking about the word invitation, what that means. It means the dissolution of everything that is inviting something wrong into your life, including fear of the ranger. And so you arrive at the point where you say, it is nothing but pain to roam around the dark woods of this world, seeing myself in a certain way or permitting other people to see me in a way that pleases me. I am no longer going to proceed on the basis of being pleased, but proceed on the basis of what is real. And I know that the old way can't be real, because what is real is what I called what is real was simply my own conditioning, my acquired ideas. And I'm tired of walking all alone out there, scared, isolated. And I'm going to follow this little sensing that I have. And I'm going to let someone else, I'm going to let something else do my seeing of myself and of total life for me. That's the way out, and that's the healing. You know what a cannon is, do you not? Yes. A cannon is a large chunk of steel with a long barrel to it, thick, powerful. And if you put a shell at one end of the cannon and trip the rope, the shell will travel through the cannon and will hurl itself at whatever is in its path, destroy whatever is in its path by exploding. A piece of artillery. Think of it in your mind. You can picture it in your mind, can't you? You've seen them. So here's a cannon set up somewhere in a field. If you place a loaf of bread in front of it, the cannon will destroy the loaf of bread when it goes off. You place a pretty bouquet in front of it, and the shell will go through the barrel of the cannon and destroy the bouquet. You put a human being in front of it, and it will destroy the man or the woman. Furthermore, if you take 12 cannons over here on the left and 12 cannons over on the right, and you oppose them to each other, and all 12 of those cannons go off, in a very short period of time, there are 24 smoking hulks of what used to be cannons. The point is this, as far as cannons are concerned. A cannon can't think. It can only act. It can only destroy. It has no discrimination of what's in front of it. No matter what is in front of it becomes its victim, becomes destroyed. And it's pretty nerve-wracking as well as destructive, isn't it? It's noisy, it's unpleasant. There's something very, very unnatural about it. Now, here's what we're talking about. We're talking about human cannons, are we not? Like a cannon, a man or a woman is mindless. Now, you can go out, if you want, and talk to a canon and tell it the following. Sir, you are very destructive. No matter what you do, you destroy something. That's in the nature of your operation. A shell is put in you and you go off and the shell destroys. You're very destructive. You're talking to the cannon. It can't react. It can't think. There's no way it can understand what you're talking about. Now, I want you to know that one of the greatest single problems we have as human beings who want to cease to be canons, destructive, unpleasant, one of the greatest problems we have, and you listen to this and you watch how you react to this, is that we're simply unable to admit that we're wrong. Now, you tell the canon that it's wrong to go around destroying trees and wheat fields and human beings. It can't understand what you're talking about. How do you get through to a world that's in the habit of destroying itself? How do you get through to it? Just one point. Look, I'm narrowing it down to one thing. You should be able to think about this now. Sir, madam, you are wrong about the kind of a life you're living. You're wrong about the way you think. Can't you see that, sir? Can't you see the results of it? Can't you see that you're simply a cannon firing at other cannons? They fire back at you. No wonder your life is in shambles. No wonder you shake. No wonder it's destructive. Back to the point I just made. This is something you've got to think about long and hard. That one of the most difficult things for any man or any woman, including people in this room and listening to this talk, is simply to admit that you said something wrong, you did something wrong, you had a wrong feeling. You narrow this down to this one fact that we just can't admit, can't say, I was very foolish. I was all wrong about that. But you have to actually do it with feeling. We talked about that a bit last night. Your heart has to say it, not your mind. People even go around bragging how honest they are about their wrongness, and it stays with them. The wrongness, the canon is still within them. Listen to this secret of liberation from the madness, the fixation of being unable to admit simply that we're living a wrong kind of life altogether. Not just a little bit wrong, totally wrong. We're all wrong, not just a little, because we're starting with the wrong premise that we have this separate individual self, which makes everything else wrong, which makes us blast the world and get blasted in return. Now listen to this. You have beliefs, do you not? You have attitudes. You have habitual ways in which you look out and view the world. You have your favorite ways of handling a certain kind of a situation. Maybe a male-female situation. You have certain ways in which you think, gentlemen, you have certain ways in which you think toward that woman when you see her. What is it? Attraction, repulsion, anger, wonderment, confusion. We are loaded with shells, one after another, going out into the world and producing destruction because we're mindless like the cannon. All right. We have these hundreds of attitudes, beliefs, so-called convictions, ways of thinking, ways of feeling, ways of seeing. Now, let me tell you that you can begin very easily to admit that you're wrong and cease to be a destructive canon by understanding that not one of the 10,000 beliefs you have are you. But look, the canon has his eyes closed. It doesn't see anything. It doesn't even see the results of that shell going off and blasting millions of people in a war, for example. It doesn't see how it hurts other people in this mental crime that we briefly discussed. It can't see a thing. All right. Now here's your position. You're always reacting. You're going to react hundreds of times until this evening. And you go to bed and you'll still react while you're in bed. Now, the reaction itself is not the major problem. The major problem is that, still being a mindless cannon, the blast goes off toward yourself or toward the outer world. You blast the outer world, you equally blast yourself, you destroy yourself. You know, if a shell gets stuck in a cannon and gets stuck in the barrel, it'll go off there and destroys the cannon. That's happened many times in warfare. The point is, you must understand clearly that you are not the shells. You're not your thoughts. You, capital U, are not the way you think. That thought, right now, as you're reacting to me, it's not your thought. The feeling you had this morning over some little incident down at the cafeteria, that feeling you have, look, I'm trying to tell you something. It is not your feeling. It is not you. All right. If you can see that shyness that you have toward people in the world, which makes you irritable, by the way, shyness and irritability go together. You see that. This shy hyphen irritability, if you can see that is a way you behave, a way you act, if you can see it as something apart from your real nature, and there's something in you that can stand apart and see that. If you can see that, then automatically, without effort, without strain, you understand how easy it is. In fact, it happens. You understand how easy it is not to say, I was wrong, because you see, it is not you. At last, you see the shyness, irritation, and you say, at last, after all these years, I've got it. What I see is that there is wrongness. I told you, you're never wrong. You're never irritable. You're never shy. You've picked it up all along the way. And you've taken it in, and you said, how nice to be me. Every time you say, how nice to be me, that is followed immediately by the reaction, how miserable to be me, right? See the opposites there? Can't you understand? Let's go all the way on this. Let's hope you can grasp it. Absolutely nothing is you. Nothing virtuous. You're not good. You're not nice. You're not a pleasant person. You're not kindly. You're not loving. You're not generous. You're not spiritual. Because if you are those, then you will think the opposite of yourself, and you are trapped, and you are a vicious cannon. You think you're nice, huh? You think you're religious, you're kindly, generous. How come you do indeed swing over to the opposite? See, this is the hell of our emotional life. That nothing is ever settled. We're compelled constantly to keep ourselves in place. And oh, how you hate being nice. I don't want to give $5 down at the office. When the phone rings, and even when I suspect it's a salesman, and he starts off with flattering me, calling me by my name, and saying, sir. Even when he does that, there's something in me, it's suspicious that he's going to try to sell me something, but I go along with it because after all, I'm a nice person. I'm not a rude person. And so you let him waste his time and your time. Finally you say, no, I'm not interested in whatever he's trying to sell. But all that time you have been untrue to truth. All because you wanted to be your set of ideas about yourself. All because you have an idea, an ideal of what it means to be a decent, right kind of human being. And no wonder you feel this way. Everyone you've talked to, met, your parents, their friends, everybody conned you. Everybody deceived you. And as you grew up, you imitated them. And you said, must be the right way. Everybody does it this way. See, I'll tell you, the horrible facts about human nature and human ways are resisted so fiercely by us. Because if I don't go along with the morality, with the so-called goodness of my parents and friends, then how do I become good? There's something in you that way down deep that says, what is goodness? What is true morality? And you don't hear an answer yet. And you don't wait for an answer because there's something wrong with you. The cannon is still operating. And so you say, there's nothing else. Just as I used to catch my mother, you're talking to yourself now, just as I used to catch my mother and my father quoting religious verses and putting on phony smiles and praying, just as I used to catch them doing that, I guess this is what life is all about, and I guess this is what I have to settle for. And if I do that, I've got it. If I do that, I will be accepted. They will love me. What happened? Shall I tell you what happened? When you went along with the phoniness of society, they didn't love you, they despised you. They despised you for being as big a phony as they are. They know you're playing the game, and you know you're playing the game. And now you are on the road to madness. No wonder you're on the road. You've said, I'll go along with what was handed to me. And look what happens to me, a result. I got married as they said I should. I had children as they said I should. I went to work as they said I should. I did this or that, and I had a nice, respectable home. And the whole thing is driving me crazy. Now you cry out in the depths of your spirit. You cry out, the greatest mistake any human being can ever make. You cry out, I guess there is nothing else. I guess I have to go along with the hell of conforming to society into my own acquired ideas, my own acquired habits of handling the world out there. No matter how destructive it is, I guess I have to go along with that because I don't know anything else. I don't know where to find it. I don't know who to ask. It's much deeper than that. Not only that, there's something in you that doesn't want the something else. It exists. but you don't want it because you have gone so far in your madness. You've gone so far in your madness that you've decided to call that sanity. Therefore, if you ever hear about insanity, about sanity, you call that insanity. And now you are settled for life. Now you're the mindless canon. No one can come up to it, can they? And talk to it and reason with it, because it has no way of reasoning. Review to this point. If you can understand, first of all, that you are indestructive, and then begin to see why you won't admit you're wrong, which is that you identify with yourself, with your beliefs, with everything, even your own insanity. You identify with that. You take it as being you. If you can begin to see that and see the mistake is calling yourself anything whatever. You can then intelligently begin to experiment with yourself out in the world and inwardly by ceasing to put the labels on yourself. No, I refuse absolutely to feel guilty over what I did. I refuse it. No, I am not going to fall into that again, and you had better get fully emotional over it. If you don't, you won't feel the rightness of it. My dear mother, my dear father, my dear husband, wife, friend, employer, stranger, I vow to you, this is the last time I take your attempts to make me feel guilty. This is the last time I accept it. I'm going to be tempted to feel guilty because that's the only thing I've ever been able to do all my life. But I'm going to catch that devil behind the 12th tree. When you tell me, oh, you're not as nice as you used to be. I'm going to catch you and I'm going to stop it in its tracks because I see and understand that I am not that guilty, shameful reaction. I heard that I wasn't. I'm going to see that I'm not. I'm going to set myself free of all those blasting cannons out in the world that can only destroy. I'm going to understand that I don't have to be a cannon in return. When the world blasts me, I don't have to blast back. I can be above it. I'm not a piece of steel, cold steel, destructive. I have been. But I've heard that there's a possibility of being more intelligent than being the cannon that I was all my life. Therefore, world, when you, the cannons, blast me, shoot at me in any way at all, you're angry at me, you try to make me feel guilty, guess what? I'm not going to fire back. Because I know what will happen if I fire back. I'll keep myself just as much as a cannon, and you are. And by the grace of heaven, I'm going to get away from the millions of cannons out there who have no decency, no intelligence, who all they know what to do is to destroy and be destroyed in turn. And I am going to start to be a human being in the real meaning of that term instead of a cold piece of steel. So, world, I've got news for you. You are all through trying to take me over. It worked for 30 years, 40 years, 60 years. Here's where it stops. Aren't you glad about all this? Huh? That you don't have to go along with you anymore. Never mind the world. Never mind the 4 billion cannons out there. Be concerned with your own self-cannon. That's where you have to work. Look, If you're not a cannon anymore, if you're a human being, if you're awake, if you're alert, if you know what you're doing, you have no connection at all with the 4 billion cannon out there. Look, you know what could happen? You could be standing right in the middle of them, out in an enormous field, 4 billion cannon all surrounded you, up on a slant, and they're all slanted down on the hill, pointed at you. And at the signal from the devil, they all go off at once. Bang, crash. And when the smoke clears, you're standing there, calmly smiling. Nothing has happened to you because you're a human being now. And the shells just go through. They don't. You see, when you're spiritual, there's nothing solid about it that the solid world can hit. Nothing happens. Absolutely nothing. Now we have to talk a little bit about, in connection with this, more about gullibility and suggestion. I suppose in some period of history, when they first started to make cannons, they made them that long, just little tiny ones. Then as man got more, quote mark, intelligent mechanically, he built the big Berthas, mile-long barrels. But at some time, they must have had little small ones. In fact, I think you see them in museums. They put them on top of the castle wall. And pretty soon, both sides found out that castle walls are no match for cannon, so it destroyed castles as defenses, because they get big ones that go through a wall right away. That's your history lesson for this morning. Watch for the small little cannon when we have our banquet. You may be sitting next to a cannon. A cannon may be sitting next to you. A cannon. What I'm saying at, the cannon is the little look. The cannon is the little remark. The cannon is when someone looks at your plate and see how you've heaped it up, and you resent it. Stop looking at my plate. If you want to be free, you have to let people look at your plate without you reacting angrily toward them. You get large blasts in life, to be sure. But you have such an opportunity to catch the little ones because they're far more frequent, right? So, we're so easily wafted around by the word, the look, by our own feelings that someone maybe is coming over to sit down next to us and we don't want them to sit next to us. You don't say, do you? I don't want you to sit next to me, but you feel it. And you feel the blast of your own cannon going off of this resentful feeling. You know, you take a little boat and put it out in the ocean, a one-man boat. And if there's no pilot in the boat, no captain of the boat, it's at the mercy of the winds, isn't it? And the tides and the waves. The wind comes up, and because there's no one guiding the boat, it will go off to the west, and it will run into some rocks, and it will get smashed or battered. And if it doesn't, just gets battered and doesn't get sunk, then it'll bounce back off the rocks and drift around in the ocean again, and it'll go off to the north this time, and it'll get blown right into a mass of seaweed, and got entangled in it. Look how entangled you are with yourself. All because the boat was unmanned or unwomaned. And so the boat finally gets out of that mass of seaweed and goes to the next mass of seaweed a few months or a few years later. Why don't you think about the possibility of returning to the boat, becoming in charge of it, so that The boat goes where you want it to go instead of where unconscious forces take it. See, as long as you're asleep, you are indeed the victim of everyone and everything. You're a victim. The boat goes anywhere. Once you occupy it and you take the rudder, no matter what way the wind goes, of course, you can guide the boat wherever you want to go. You can live your own life. You're not doing it now, and that's why it's such an unhappy life, such a tense one. A life in which you have to look out and ask, what person can give me what I want? Furthermore, I wish I knew what I want. It gets pretty confusing, doesn't it? Now I want to tell you how to get back into the boat and start to steer course for your own life. And before I tell you what it is, I want to tell you with words, which is not easy, the overwhelming importance of it. And I'll speak personally for a minute. I know in my heart that what I'm going to tell you, there is no method, no spiritual technique more valuable. If you put this first, all the other lessons will come to you and work out for you. And here's what I'm talking about. Make up your mind at this very moment that effective as of now and throughout this day and tomorrow and in the coming months and years, that no matter where you are or what you're doing, you're going to know where you are and know what you're doing. I'm doing it right now. I know that I'm here and I know that you're there, and there's no division between us. There's no thought walls between us as far as I'm concerned. I'm looking at you and I'm seeing you out there. I'm also equally aware of myself talking to you. I'm aware of how thoughts come up and finally go into words and they go out to you. At this present moment, I know what I'm doing without any judgment or anything, without trying to change it in any way, but simply seeing what is happening. Now, I want to add something to that technique of knowing where you are, knowing what you're doing at the moment you're doing it. I want to add something else to it, and I wish you to also add to it. Try to find out why you're doing what you're doing. Add the word. See, you have the word what. What am I doing now? Well, I'm watering the garden out there, and there are certain thoughts that are intruding unnecessarily. At your level, thoughts intrude everywhere. I know what I'm doing. I'm watering the garden, and I'm also thinking some thoughts which I don't understand, but I'm going to put a why in addition to the what. What am I doing? I'm watering the garden. Why am I watering the garden with all these confusing thoughts in my mind? Answer the question of why. It will can lead in dozens of different helpful directions for you to add why to it. And here is one of them. Why am I watering my vegetable garden out there and permitting a stream of unnecessary thoughts to go through my mind? Well, I can now see the why is that, among other things, I have wrong motives. Someone offended me yesterday, and that offensive scene is now going through my mind as I'm watering the vegetable garden. Why am I permitting that to happen? Because I have wrong motives. What is the wrong motive? The wrong motive is, I'm not sure of myself. I was blasted by that individual, and that hurt. And to my astonishment, I can now see that I am so in love with that hurt that my motive is to keep it going. What on earth is wrong with me that I want to keep the hurtful feelings going? Why? The whole thing is getting clear. The light is coming from different directions, pointing down into my psychic system, making the why clear. Get that garden watered swiftly, and go inside and take paper and pencil, put why at the top of a page, clean piece of paper, and write down all the whys. I permitted those thoughts to go through my mind because, now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, because I don't know any better. That's a good generalization, isn't it, to start with? I just don't know any better. Because if I'm unhappy with these thoughts, why do I permit them? There's something wrong with me. 2, I still love to fight because I think it's necessary to fight for my survival. I think I must keep myself as a cannon. So the third one is why? Because I'm stupid. The why begins to uncover, bring to the surface, covered up, unconscious motives. I didn't know why I behaved that way. Why, whenever I see a certain person, I always have the same reaction to him. I wasn't even aware of it, but before, but now I see it. I just don't like him. Find out why you don't like him. Maybe, as we earlier said, he offended you, and now you're being annoyed at him and irritated is your way of striking back. I see indeed, absolutely. The why of all this madness is because I'm a cannon and haven't understood it. From now on, I'm going to understand the whole process and be free of it. You have a lot to think about now, don't you? You have a lot to be aware of, don't you? Well, start now. Self-reminding is a necessity. When is the last time you reminded yourself that nothing in your life is more important than what you're getting here? Now, what you're getting here is something truly miraculous. Something that can make you a different kind of a man, different kind of a woman. So the question is, at the start, what is preventing you from putting the inner kingdom first, last, and always? Oh, I know you come here, and I know you make notes, and I know you feel as well as think certain truths. I know that. I'm asking you to ask yourself, how many dozens of items within you are more important than the truth which can change you? Would you like to take a list sometime, write down a list of what took you over during your day, and proved right in front of your own eyes what you really value? Don't you dare think simply by your constant attendance here, regular attendance here, that indicates where your heart is. It indicates where you may appear to be physically at certain times of the week, namely here in this room. I'm asking you to make a little practical comparison as to what occupies your mind and your spirit and your whole life when you are not in this room. See, in this room, I know you're under a certain authority, and you know it, and you like it, and that is good. When you go out of here, and you lose the impulse, the spiritual impulse of this room, you lose the connection with the truth, and literally thousands of forces come in and take over your mind. Where did you wander to today at 11 o'clock this morning? You know, wherever you were. Your body was in a certain place. Where did your mind go? Why did you keep it where you were working or driving or working around the house maybe? There's something you don't understand, and let's see if we can bring understanding. You do not understand the enormous subtlety of thought thieves. Of thoughts that have had you in their power so long, you don't question them. You take your neurosis as normal. You take your peering out at the world with fear and trembling as a lifelong habit, and as far as you're concerned, as far as you can see, then the only thing that can happen to you is for that habit to continue. You don't give yourself the shock we've talked about so much of suddenly seeing where you are mentally and emotionally, seeing that you're simply going along with your old, petty, boring self with business as usual. Now, if you get a phone call from an old friend and says, hey, we're having an exciting party, lots of drinks and lots of fun, lots of flirting, come on over to the party, and you say no, you think you have done a marvelous spiritual act. You think that you have resisted temptation. Or if someone says, oh, let's go down to the theater, or let's go shopping, and you say no, you think that you have obeyed the whole work of truth in a major way. You had better see how easy it is. Maybe you didn't want to go to the party anyway. You were tired, or you had something better you wanted to do at home. You didn't want to go shopping. It's a long, hot day out there, and you don't particularly want to buy anything today. And so you think maybe that's some kind of a spiritual triumph, when it was simply the triumph of desire, one desire over another. Here's what we're getting at. Do you know what it really means to be spiritual? It means to catch yourself being stolen by your own thoughts. See, what do you think your world consists of now? I'll tell you what it consists of. It consists of thoughts about things. Your thoughts about people, about yourself, about the future, about the past, about what you're going to do. Don't you see then that you live in a thought world? And anything, practically anything or anyone can come along and simply kidnap you so that you're gone. This goes on all day long without your knowledge. And I'll give you some examples of that. Now you listen to this. This will hit home. Do you see on the news or read in a magazine or a newspaper of some tragedy? The car goes off the highway. A woman alone in the car goes off the highway, and the story is entitled, I was trapped for 6 days under my car out in the desert. So you read the story. You listen to this now. This is going to save you from yourself. The car goes off the highway, off the road, and the story tells of how the woman was trapped for 6 days underneath her car. And it tells of her great agony and how she prayed to God to save her. And she was thirsty and hungry. And she wondered if anyone up on the highway could see her car. She didn't think so because it fell in a point where it couldn't be noticed. And you can imagine, of course, the agony of it. Now, you listen to me. Now, I want to tell you what's wrong with you. You know what's wrong with you? You were that woman trapped in that car. That's why they print stories like that, by the way, because people identify with the tragedy. They were the victim. You actually, whether you're aware of how your mind works or not, you were underneath that car. You were doing all that praying and all that agonizing, and of course there you are at home, quietly reading the story. But you were kidnapped just as much as someone carried your physical body off, because this is what you want to do with your miserable, wretched little life, to get thrills out of it. I'll tell you what to do sometime. Next time you read a story like that, that was simply an example, of course. You can get all kinds of them. Well, let's give another one. Friend, comes over and starts to tell you about the fight he or she had today with the spouse or with the boss. And of course, she's going to go into all kind of detail about it, how cruel her husband was to her, and he actually threw something at her. She felt tempted to throw something back, but she was afraid that if she retaliated, that it'd make him all the more angry, and he'd keep throwing things. Finally, he might hit her with his fist, something like that. And all the time, her great self-centered, egotistical, tragic story is going on. What's happening to you? You're right in the middle of her fight, aren't you? Right in the middle of it. And you don't... Look, this has been happening for how long? How many fights have you been in simply by thinking about them? That's what the involvement was, don't you understand? All the time she was telling you, all the time the woman was in the car, you're putting yourself into that tragic position, and you are getting the ego thrills out of it just as much as she is. This is called negative identification, in which you identify with it. That is, you get a sense of identity of being the woman in the overturned car, or of some way being involved in the fighting with the woman's spouse, and you're gone. Now, see, you have your reward. You have had, since you grew old enough to begin to think a little bit independently, that is, you're not a small child anymore, you have had thousands of rewards. Because no one ever came along and tried to point out to you that you are living a false life, an unnecessary life, a stupid life, an earthly life, a painful life, when you don't have to do so. The world says this is the way to live. Get involved with our madness, and we'll give you something to do with your life. Now, connect that thought, that the world will give you something to do with your life, connect that thought with the idea that the whole world is indeed a lunatic asylum, entirely, both inside and outside the walls of a physical hospital. Everyone is mad, and the world invites you to its madhouse and say, come in and participate. I ask you again, where did you live in your mind today? If you repeat the tragedies the horror stories of being caught underneath a car for 6 days. If you repeat that sort of thing long enough, and add to it, you repeat the story that woman told you about how violent her husband was, you repeat that over and over and over, and if you don't listen and act from the truth you're hearing here, you will never understand what I am talking about tonight, and you don't understand it now. You are thinking about it. But I've given you an opening. I've given you an open door, so that the very next time that happens, the 6 o'clock news or the next article, or someone comes up to you right here downstairs perhaps, someone comes up to you and makes a negative remark, I am giving you an open door where you can understand that since all you have is thought, you go into thought about it and you connect it with memory, and you are gone, and you are off somewhere trapped underneath the automobile or fighting the spouse. There's no way really to explain to most people that this is what they're doing. And it is extremely hard to explain to you that this is what they're doing, what you're doing. Because you see, you are going to have to be so independent of your past that you say, all right, I was told to watch for the next time my thought life was dragged away into a madhouse of one kind or another underneath the car. I was told that I'm going to have to watch the next time that happens, and I was told that if I remain conscious, if I remain home, I won't be dragged away into the insanity of that, but that I can stay sane. You understand, do you not, that that is insanity to be taken away by any old person, any old thought, any kind of a sour face that comes along. That's called insanity. This is what you have inside your own mind. And so, isn't it nice to know that we are learning how to become insane for the first time in your life. Now, you don't know what it means to be sane. All you know what it means is to be mad. Well, now, can you make a connection there? Can you see that to be a lunatic is exactly the same thing as being tense, the same thing as being nervous, the same thing as having to prove yourself, the same thing as getting mad all the time, as getting critical, as getting sarcastic? Do you understand that I've described what it means to be mad? To be in any negative state at all, any kind of a state that burns you. That is your problem. You do not feel the fires of your own hell, therefore you deny that you're there. Hell and insanity being the same thing. Of course, what else? It's all one grand negativity, one horrible self-punishment which you have accepted as necessary, and therefore do not make a very determined and a very long determined effort to say, stop. This is where I stop. Now I'm going to give you an exercise. It should be very interesting to you. And this should go on not just dozens of times, not even hundreds of times, but thousands of times. And here's what it will do for you. Something absolutely new, unique, novel, marvelous, and shocking. You know how it is when you go to bed at night and you're lying there and your mind, of course, is racing with the day's events. How many of you know what I'm talking about? And you thought you'd like to go to sleep because your body's tired, but your mind won't let your body sleep, right? I see some of you nodding. It's a madhouse up there, agree? And you, by the way, you ask how to stop it. There's no way you can stop it. You are the madhouse. How can the lunatic cure the lunatic? It can't. Something higher than the lunatic has to cure. But here you are lying there. Here's what to do. Deliberately, here's an exercise. You have to do this. Deliberately think of some unhappy experience that you have had in the past. It could have been the same day. It could have been 30 years ago. Or, if it wasn't a personal unhappy experience, think of that news story you saw where all those people were crushed by the falling building and the ambulances came up and hundreds of people were killed. And you pictured yourself under the rubble too, or under the car, or being involved in the woman screaming how bad her husband had beat her, and you were all involved in it. I'm asking you to get one specific horror scene which you have lived with and enjoyed as entertainment, which shows your level, which you have enjoyed as entertainment, and I want you to take this specific instance and do something different with it. Now, what you used to do with it is let it take you over, run away with you, make you nervous, make you hot, make you unhappy, but this was what you like. You like being unhappy because it's the only you know, and you're not going to risk losing that. How's that for insanity? I mean, you're not going to let God, reality, take away your misery because you're not quite sure whether the alternative is as good if indeed there is an alternative. Here you're the nutty little mind figuring all these things out, and all it can do is the squirrel running around in the squirrel cage nuttily. Now you know what you used to do with these experiences. Now you're lying in your bed, and you're thinking about, by the way, it's best to lie on your back for this. There's a reason for it. Lie on your back. Physically comfortable, hands wherever you're the most comfortable. You can take 2 pillows. Have you ever noticed, by the way, you don't know what to do with your hands when you're laying on back in bed? Take 2 pillows and put them under each arm, and you'll be amazed at how comfortable you are. Oh, we're now a different... You didn't know you was going to get that tonight, did you? Take a pillow on the head and one on each arm. You'll think you're in heaven in bed there. Try it. Now you're physically comfortable. At least that's something to begin with. Now think about this incident. Now it is okay to deliberately think about a negative incident because you're doing it for a conscious purpose. You have a right aim. See, and when you know that you're thinking about it, it can't harm you. When you don't know, when it's unconscious, that is when it takes you over and you blank out, block out, and it does whatever it wants to, which is a pretty dreadful, hideous thing for it to do. So, we're now in a position where you're thinking about this horrible event that you had in the past, which you were embarrassed and shamed and people laughed at you, yelled at you. Now, here's what you're to do. Oh, this is magic. You keep it in your mind. Don't let it go away. It will want to go away because the devil is now suspecting what's going on. He's suspecting that you're getting smart at last, that you're getting spiritual wisdom, and are beginning to challenge his authority. So isn't this a strange situation? You're trying to keep your mind on your misery, but you're doing it knowingly, and there's all the difference in the world. So now you're thinking about it. Now I want you to notice, as you continue to keep it in your mind, what happens to you first physically, first your body. Remember how nice and comfortable you are? Now you're running it through your mind, you're thinking about it. I want you to notice, first of all, how your body begins to get warm. It'll get a different kind of warmth. It might even get physically warm. In fact, it will. But I want you to notice a certain kind of a psychological warmth. Then I want you to notice the emotional warmth. I want you at the same time that this scene is going through your mind, I want you to see very clearly what it does to you. And what it will do to you is make you warmish, hot, feverish, agitated, nervous, uncertain. Thank God, for the first time in your life, you know how the devil operates. You have caught him right in the act. Because when he can start with your mind and keep, this is in an unconscious state now, when he can start with your mind and make you unconsciously think about that dreadful experience, seeing that he has you, he doesn't spare you. Of course not. He's the devil. There's no mercy shown to anyone. He would kill you if he could, and he kills millions of human beings. He drives them to the bridge, to jump off the bridge. He drives them to mental suicide. And you know people who are living in mental suicide, don't you? They have no life. Once he sees that he's got you up here, then he goes on to the other parts of you. Goes on to your body, goes on to your emotions, goes on to your reactions, what you think, goes on to your sex too, the sex parts of you, gets them agitated if you can, if it's that kind of a thing that you're thinking about. He'll do anything, nothing, or he'll stop short at nothing to do all he can with you at the moment, and I'll tell you why. To destroy you. Well, how would you describe what is happening to you as you lay there in that bed, watching yourself being burned in hell? Now, this will become a strange, shocking experience to you at first, because you have never understood. You didn't know that this is what has been happening to you every day. And you'll be able to understand. One day, a year ago or so, you went into the market and then the prices doubled on something and you went into hell. You went into shock. You went into resentment. I'm so helpless in the world. I can walk in the market and they double the price on something that I have to have. And you saw how the devil made you go into hatred and bitterness on that one instant alone. Something that you wanted or had and they doubled the price. But now, you having experienced this in bed one night, your understanding of what was happening to you that one night that you were laying there, letting yourself open to understanding, this is truth working on you because you're doing a truthful thing. Finally, you will understand why everything happened to you as it did in the past. Oh, you'll understand why you were so cruel to that spouse. You'll understand indeed why you had all these hideous thoughts in you toward a certain person that you smiled at when you really hated them. You'll understand that because you were indeed an unconscious sleeping human being who thought he was awake, you'll understand why you were punished by yourself on the spot for being asleep. You understand everything that happened to you, why you were so cruel, so vicious, so scared. You understand every negative experience you ever had, don't you? Aren't you understanding why you were that way? And you understand why you were such a hypocrite and pretending that you were good. You knew it was pretense. You understand it. And you understand why you went into pretense, because you thought that's the way it had to be. And also because you thought that was self-protective. And you understand why Life pressed you down so heavily all those years. All right, so now you're back. Now you're practicing in this for a long, long time, months and years. You're lying there, and you're consciously experiencing hell. And you understand that? Well, what do you know? Hell is not a location, it is a state, and I am that state. Wow. You never would have believed you could have had a spiritual experience like this. You never would have believed that there were such revelations existing in this universe, but there they are, right in front of you. You ladies looking at your husband lying right next to you, wives, husbands looking at your wives lying right next to you. You sense that you're all alone in this experience, in all probability. Now you understand, by the way, what it means to keep spiritual things sacred, that they are sacred. And you don't talk about it to him or to her, because you know that the lady knows that tomorrow morning he's going to get up, and he's going to be grouchy as usual, and he's going to go out and make his money, and he's going to crab at everything. And you ladies know what it means to be able to begin to be apart from the world and to live your own life spiritually and psychologically. Even though you live in the private lunatic asylum called your home, you understand that you can live right there, and God will teach you all day long. God himself will teach you how to be free, first of yourself, of course, and then of everyone else in that home, and then of everyone else in the whole world. So you're lying there with this experiment, and there are many dozens of conflicting emotions: the surprise of it, the delight of it, the newness of it, the wonderment of it. How could there be such an experience? See, for the first time you have contacted God himself. See, what you're doing while you're lying there, consciously thinking about a problem, a shame of the past, knowing that you're thinking about it, the devil begins to make his move. And you catch him making that move, which means that there's a little bit of you that is not the devil anymore. Do you know that practically everyone on earth is a pure devil and nothing but that? Those nice smiling people, those people who claim they know how to run the world, 100% deviltry. And that's not harsh, it's a fact, and you had better see it. And you'll see it when you're lying there and you're working, and that one little part of you, 1/1,000,000th of 1%, that isn't the devil from hell, that pure part that comes down from God and gives you insight, and you watch hell burning right inside of you, in your mind, your emotion. As I said, watch for the warmth, the fever, psychological fever, and you'll see what causes it. What causes it is you being you. Thank God for that one small little part that isn't me. Oh, you're going to get excited. You're going to come to every class now. Because not just the old nature is coming here anymore, but that right excited part that comes here and says, wow, if that can happen to me, what else can happen? A 1,000 marvelous things can happen to you. Now, don't you ever forget this exercise. You write it down and you take it home and you practice it as often as you can. It's better to practice it when you're alone if you can, but at night when you're going off to sleep, because the world fades away a little bit. You're a little bit quiet. Of course, your mind is racing. But you practice this right in the middle of your racing mind. You select the thought you want to think, the thought about that tragedy or that car, and then you watch and see what happens to you as a result of that. After watching the result, that is the heat, the agitation of it, you will understand that the healing factor, the cure, is not a part of anything that was ever inside you before. When you understand that, automatically, although we fight hard for a long time, you will begin to yield to God because you understand that it is He who is giving you the insight, the intelligence to see what is happening.